So Scott, I saw your post on, combating group think, and like it was pretty fascinating what you had to say. So if you can kind of give us a little bit of a intro into that and so on.
The concept of groupthink was really kind of tested and validated in an experiment in 1951. It's called the sort of Asch conformity experiment, and they took a test subject and a group of actors, and they put one line on a board and three other lines on a board. All the three lines were of different sizes, and they asked everyone in the room which line matches the three, and all the actors lied and said the wrong answer. And the test subject, in 75% of the cases, gave an incorrect answer purposely, just to fit in with all the actors that had answered incorrectly. So that pressure is so big. And if you think about that in an organization, what does that mean when a team is brainstorming, or they have sort of a curveball thrown at them and have to adapt and change? That we can be creating environments and circumstances where it's just easier to go along to fit in, rather than to do what that individual person knows is right and believes is the right thing to do. So I talk to teams a lot about how can we create environments where people are free to speak and not kind of just going along with the group because that's easy.
When I read it, and it just like hits me, because of course I think about myself and like where I've sold out on like different beliefs that I've had, right?
Yeah.
But then taking it that step further and looking at it as a leader and being in like those creative rooms where we are going through an idea that's a betterment of whatever it is, and we're pushing boundaries, and then to think that like maybe people on my team weren't really going for something because I never really thought about that 75% and how that could like really derail some of the things that everybody's really striving for.
Yeah, and think about that in a context of a hire you're trying to make. Let's say you've got a diverse interview panel with all these points of view, but one person spotted something that is not a good match for the company, but they don't feel free to sort of speak up. They're just going along with the rest of the group.
I've heard that, where everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect hire because of this, and this, and to be like, hey, have you thought about that? You
need to build a habit around it, right? The three strategies I really try to implement. So first is leader goes last, right? That if we're in a team discussion and we're sort of generating ideas or maybe a risk mitigation strategy or whatever we're trying to think through, that most senior person in the room is the last one to contribute their thoughts and ideas. That then kind of can make space for everyone else, that they're just not going to say, oh, well, I agree with what the boss said or the leader said or the most senior person said. So that is one way to do it. Another, and I think I call it kind of write it out, right? That we throw the problem on the table, right? And we all spend 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, writing down our thoughts, right? And if you're in a really sort of facilitated environment, you could be doing it on Post-it notes. If you're, in a virtual meeting, there's lots of technology that can do that, like Miro and some others, where you can sort of post things. That not only helps get everyone's ideas out, right? But circumstances where people speak English as a second language, you may have employees that are sort of hearing, deaf or hard of hearing, where that sort of open discussion can be harder for them to engage. People that speak English as a second language, and even, we've all been on the virtual meeting where, there's half the people in the room kind of talking over a speakerphone and talking over all of us, and then it's really hard. It's really hard for the virtual people to engage. So spending that few minutes just getting your thoughts on paper can really just get everyone's ideas out. And then, if you're Post-its, you can group things or, do whatever's doing. But that's a really good strategy to just do that brain dump, right onto paper.
All I could think of is it's like the Jeopardy method, like at the end of Jeopardy when everybody would have to write down and like, here it is. Like, what did you go with?
Exactly. Similar to that leader goes last, like that we could, you can devise some sort of method for conversational turn taking, right? People can be sort of more quiet and hang back, or people that are virtually engaging. And, you could do it alphabetically, you could do it by birth year, you could do it by the month you were born in, like whatever order your team decides to do, but giving space for individuals to engage, right? Because, I've used this example a few times. Like I'm a very like, it's up here, it's coming out of my mouth. And that can be very off-putting to people, right? Like the power dynamic of, I'm in a senior role, someone's in a junior role. It could be gender dynamics. It could be, I'm an English speaker and that person is not an English speaker as their first language, or whatever sort of power dynamics there. And I can very much unintentionally just dominate a conversation, because that's how my brain works, right? It just feels easy and comfortable for me to just like all this coming up here and it's just all, chatting out of my mouth. So I think being, especially for those of us that are senior and that's our way of being very intentional and purposeful with yourself, can solve a whole bunch of other problems, not just groupthink, but some of those other dynamics that can come into play in a workspace, in a team environment, even in a one-on-one environment.
That's amazing. Anything else that you want to talk about with like that groupthink that you can add to?
I guess part of that groupthink, that really does relate to inclusion, right? Like that is a way to get all of the voices heard, and that's a very narrow, specific problem, but in the grand scheme of things, that is inclusion. And I don't ever want sort of organizations to lose sight of that, right? Like there's some body of research from Deloitte specifically that talks about when an organization has inclusive cultures, that those organizations are 2 times more likely to meet or exceed financial targets, 3 times more likely to have high-performing teams, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. It just always makes me wonder, why wouldn't we want to be doing this kind of work if we can see that sort of performance gain from our individuals and from our teams? That it's just good business sense, and it makes people happier. They engage in work, they feel more satisfied, they feel more connected with each other, and have really a purpose that's driving performance of the business.
That's amazing. Like, Scott, thank you so much for your insight on groupthink and just everything that you really went in there. I mean, that was like, it's astonishing.